Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Saturday, the 10th of October. As was pointed out, the 10th of the 10th, 2020. Sitting in the church with the linen taken off the table and taken to the hall for our service tomorrow. And we can see the Lord's table where in older times, and hopefully one day again soon, we celebrate the Lord's Supper. But I continue to look at the book of Ezekiel. In chapter 40, Ezekiel writes, "In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th of the month, in the 14th year after the fall of the city, on that very day, the hand of the Lord was on me, and he took me there. In visions of God, he took me to the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain, on whose south side were some buildings that looked like a city. He took me there, and I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze. He was standing in the gateway with a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. The man said to me, 'Son of man, look carefully and listen closely and pay attention to everything I am going to show you, for that is why you have been brought here. Tell the people of Israel everything you see.' I saw a wall completely surrounding the temple area." And Ezekiel continues writing about what he saw, and as they measured it and the size of the temple walls and the alcoves and the entrances. And what struck me is he's seeing this as a vision, and this was in the 25th year of the exile. They were in exile for 70 years, so they had another 45 years to go before they went back to Israel, and then another while before the temple got rebuilt. But he was being shown this to tell the people. And clearly this was to be a message of hope to them, that the restoration would come, that they would get back, that a temple would be rebuilt, that things would be better than they were at that point in time, if they would listen to God, walk with God, and do what God says. And for us as Christians, we have all these visions of heaven and Jesus' description of heaven. And they're not here now, they're in the future. But in the same way that this vision of the restored temple was there to give the people courage and strength to keep going, our vision of heaven is to keep us going as well. To know that as we go through life, yes, it's difficult and sometimes there are problems and we might not overcome. And a whole lot of the people that would have heard this vision of Ezekiel would probably have died in exile. But the hope was still there. And for us, that is still the case. We may have a good life and we might see God's blessing. We might be struggling. We might just have to take God's presence on his word, because we might not necessarily experience it. But God gives us these visions of heaven to say that ultimately is where we're going. That ultimately is where we belong. That is what we're being prepared for. So as you go through this day and this week, think of heaven in the same way that the people in Ezekiel's time were just given this description of a temple which wasn't there, but one day would be. We have this vision of heaven that isn't there, but one day will be, and that is an encouragement and a strength to us, because that is where we're heading. Know that and be blessed.